English Podcast 5. Why do wars happen?
War. A single word, yet it carries the weight of thousands of years of human history, suffering, and sacrifice. It is one of the darkest creations of mankind, a force that can destroy cities, families, and dreams within seconds. But why do wars happen? What drives nations to conflict, and what do these wars leave behind? To understand war, we must begin by asking the deeper questions about its origin. Most wars are born from the desire for power, control, land, resources, or the clash of ideologies. Throughout history, leaders have used war as a tool to expand their empires, defend their interests, or prove their dominance. Others justify war with religion or nationalism, convincing their people that violence is not only necessary, but noble. Sometimes, war erupts not from ambition, but from fear. Fear of being attacked, fear of being forgotten, fear of losing control. And sometimes, it's the people who rise up, demanding justice and change when peaceful efforts have failed. Civil wars, rebellions, revolutions, these are also wars, and their scars can be just as deep. But regardless of the reason, the result is almost always the same: pain, loss, and devastation. When we think of war, we often picture soldiers and battlefields. But war is much more than that. War reaches into the lives of ordinary people, families, children, elders, who never chose to fight, but are forced to suffer the consequences. Imagine waking up to the sound of explosions. Imagine running from your home with nothing but a bag, not knowing if you'll ever return. Imagine your school being turned into rubble, your parents missing, and your childhood suddenly replaced by survival. These are not stories from the past. They're happening right now in many parts of the world. Children who grow up in war zones often suffer not only from hunger and fear, but from a deep emotional trauma that shapes their entire future. Some are forced to fight, to carry weapons instead of books. Others lose access to education entirely. A whole generation can grow up knowing only fear and violence. Even for those who are not on the front lines, war changes everything. It separates families, destroys economies, and leaves entire communities in ruins. And for those who do fight, the soldiers, the price is equally high. Whether they return home injured, traumatized, or emotionally numb, many never truly come back the same. They carry the weight of what they've seen, what they've done, and what they couldn't prevent. Often, they face silence. No one wants to hear the stories. No one knows what to say. And so, they suffer alone, not from bullets, but from memories. It's not just individuals who are changed forever. Entire nations bear the cost of war. Think about the schools that are no longer standing, the hospitals that are gone, the roads and bridges destroyed, the jobs lost, the culture erased. In some cases, centuries of history are lost in minutes. Temples, libraries, paintings, all wiped out by a single bomb. War does not only destroy the present. It erases the past and threatens the future. It also breeds division. Wars pit one group against another. They turn neighbors into enemies. And even after the war is over, that hatred can last for generations. Post-war recovery is never just about rebuilding buildings. It's about healing hearts, restoring trust, and learning to live side by side again. And that often is the hardest part. Refugees are another part of this story. People who once had homes, jobs, communities, now live in tents or camps, waiting for a place to belong again. The emotional toll of being a refugee is immense. Imagine losing your identity, your language, your dignity, and having to start over in a place where no one knows your name. Looking back at history, we can find examples of incredible destruction, but also of growth, resilience, and learning. After World War II, the world stood at a crossroads. Leaders knew that another war of that scale could end humanity. So, they created the United Nations, signed peace treaties, and built institutions meant to protect future generations. Some countries, like Germany and Japan, transformed themselves completely, focusing on peace, diplomacy, and economic development. These moments remind us that humans can learn. But they also remind us that the lessons of war must be remembered, or they will be repeated. We often hear the phrase, "never again." But history tells us that saying it is not enough. We must act through education, empathy, and constant effort. It's important to understand that war doesn't only affect the outside world. It changes people on the inside, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. War rewires how we see others. It makes enemies out of strangers. It turns fear into hatred. It reduces human lives to numbers and statistics. But even in the heart of war, there are stories of hope. There are nurses who risk their lives to treat the wounded. There are people who smuggle food to starving families. There are those who hide the enemy's children, knowing the risk and doing it anyway. These acts show us that humanity doesn't die in war. It resists. It whispers in the dark. It holds on. So, the real challenge we face is not just ending war, but choosing peace. But how exactly can we do that? How do we, as individuals and as a global society, prevent the next war before it begins? First, we need to understand a simple truth. Peace is not the natural silence after a war. Peace is something we must create, protect, and practice every single day. And like a garden, if we stop nurturing it, weeds will grow. Hate will grow. Violence will grow. So where do we begin? We begin with education. Education is the most powerful weapon we have, not to destroy, but to prevent destruction. When people are educated, they are harder to manipulate with lies and fear. They are more likely to question violence and less likely to follow hateful ideologies. But education is not just about math or science. It's about teaching empathy, teaching history honestly, not just the victories, but the horrors of war. Teaching critical thinking. Teaching children that those who look, speak, or pray differently are not enemies, they are fellow human beings. We must also teach the skills of peace. Just like we teach reading and writing, we must teach conflict resolution. How to listen. How to disagree respectfully. How to find common ground. Imagine a generation growing up knowing how to deal with anger without violence. How to speak with kindness. How to solve problems through cooperation, not control. That's not a dream. It's a choice if we teach it. Next, we must work to build stronger, more just societies. Wars often grow in the cracks of injustice, where people feel unheard, oppressed, or left behind. So building peace also means fighting poverty, inequality, and corruption. It means creating systems where all people, regardless of their race, religion, gender, or background, have a voice, a future, and hope. When people have jobs, food, education, and dignity, they are far less likely to be drawn into violence. When they feel protected by law, they don't need to take justice into their own hands. When leaders are held accountable, they cannot start wars for personal gain. This brings us to the role of governments and international institutions. Countries must invest in peace the way they invest in weapons. They must fund education, healthcare, and diplomacy, not just armies and defense budgets. They must take diplomacy seriously, not just as a photo opportunity, but as a long, difficult, human process of understanding. They must engage with those they disagree with, not just their allies. They must prioritize preventing conflict, not reacting to it after lives are already lost. And the international community must never turn a blind eye to injustice. Peace is not simply the absence of bombs, it's the presence of fairness and human dignity. When we ignore genocide, oppression, or occupation, we are planting the seeds of the next war. Now, let's not forget, building peace isn't just for presidents or politicians. It starts with us. It starts with how we treat people who are different, with how we speak online, with whether we choose kindness or cruelty, understanding or judgment. Each time we choose not to spread hate, not to share misinformation, not to fuel anger, we are building peace. Each time we listen before we argue, or help before we hurt, we are building peace. Each time we support peace-building efforts in our communities, speak out against discrimination, or vote for leaders who choose unity over division, we are saying no to war. And if you're asking, but I'm just one person, what difference can I make? The answer is a lot. Because peace doesn't grow from one big decision. It grows from millions of small choices every day by people like you and me. And especially today, young people have more power than ever before. Through technology, social media, and global networks, your voice can reach across borders. You can learn from others. You can speak out. You can organize. You can inspire. You can choose to become the generation that ends the cycle of war. But peace is not passive. Peace is not soft. Peace is brave. It takes strength to forgive. It takes courage to stand against injustice. And it takes wisdom to walk away from hate. So, what can you do starting today? Learn about a conflict you didn't understand before and listen to both sides. Support organizations that help war victims or promote peace education. Talk to someone from a different culture and truly listen. Call out hate when you see it, even if it's uncomfortable. Reflect on your own actions and ask, am I adding to peace or to pain? Because peace isn't something we wait for. It's something we build together in every moment, in every conversation, in every choice. As we reflect on war, what it is, what it costs, what it teaches, we must also reflect on memory. We must remember not to repeat. We must remember not to glorify. We must remember the real faces behind the headlines. Because war is not just history. It is now. And so is peace. Every day, we make a choice. To contribute to peace or to walk away from it. Thank you for listening to this podcast on Apple English. If it made you think, feel, or reflect, I hope you'll share it. Let's spread awareness. Let's talk about peace. Let's build something better together.